Ecclesiastes 1, beginning with the first verse. Amen. And it reads just like this: the words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem, king in Jerusalem. He says, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? It says, generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets, and it hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. It says, all streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, Solomon writes. More than one can say, the eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. Then he goes on to say in verse 11, no one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. This has been the word of God for the people of God gathered here this morning. Thanks be to God. You know, I've titled my sermon this morning, God Makes the Difference. God makes the difference. Who makes the difference? God makes the difference. Let us pray. Loving Father, once again we come before you in your heavenly presence, knowing that we're going to receive a word from you, Lord. And we thank you for those that have come out to hear this message. And I thank you for giving me this message, Lord. Now allow me to decrease and you increase in me as I preach your word, Lord. Make it plain and make it clear so it can be relevant in everybody's walk with you. I pray it in Jesus' name, and with thanksgiving I pray. Amen. You know, 96% of all Americans believe in God of some type. Some type of supreme being. Everybody believes in it just about. They may not call it God, but 96% of all Americans believe in some kind of higher power. So the question that people are asking is not, is there a God? The question that people are asking is, if God exists, what difference does it make? What difference does it make in my life? There is a much deeper question, this one is. So if there is a God, so what? If there is a God, why does it matter how we live our lives? So how would you answer that question? There are so many non-believers out there that are asking the question, why? Why do you believe what you believe? In 1 Peter, it says in 3:15, it says that we as believers should always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you the question, the reason why you believe what you believe. Why do you believe in the God that we serve this morning? So, you know, I read somewhere where a man decided to live his life as if there was no God at all. And it never talked about how it turned out. But you know, actually there was a man in the Bible that lived his life exactly like that. He lived his life as if there was no God at all. And he wrote an entire book in the Bible to tell us why there is a God and also the difference that this God makes in your life. I'm talking about Solomon. Solomon wrote such a book and he called it Ecclesiastes. Now see, the Bible portrays Solomon as the wisest man who ever lived. Remember, he was the son of David and Bathsheba. Now Solomon, he wrote 3 books, right, in the Bible. The first one when he was a young man. His first book was called Song of Solomon or Song of Songs. This was a book of romance, He was a young man and he would describe what real love was and what it should be like between he and his bride. Not he and it says man and his bride. It doesn't say man and his man. It doesn't say man and his woman. It says man and his bride. It just says it in the text right there. But then he got to middle age and he wrote a book about the realizations of life and he called it Proverbs, right? And it was about just practical, wise advice about how to live and how to handle relationships and how to handle money and so forth. You understand? But the book of Ecclesiastes is one of the ones that fascinates me the most. And I think it's known for there's a time for this and a time for that and a time to be born and time to die, a time to weep. Most people remember the verse in verse 3 in the first chapter. But I began to study and meditate on this man Solomon and his writings this week. And he wrote this book, Ecclesiastes, as an older man. And it's a book of regrets, basically, Pastor T. Because what Solomon does in this book, he looks back over a period of his life when he basically said, I'm going to live my life as if there is no God. And many of us today are living our lives as if there is no God, if there is no consequences for our actions at all. Because we all have a tendency to say, if there is a God, so what? What difference does it make in my life? And he writes this book to basically tell us all what he found out. So basically Solomon in Ecclesiastes, he was saying, in this book, I'm going to live my life as if there is no God. And you know what? Solomon didn't start off like that. He started off being very humble. Matter of fact, he asked God, to grant him wisdom. God would have granted him anything at all. This is back in I think 1 Kings or 2 Kings, I can't remember. But he says that if you would just grant me wisdom, just grant me wisdom, that's all I want. So he started off doing okay. But then as he began to get older, he started getting out of control. So what did Solomon find out? It was almost as if this was an experiment on logic. He was just trying to find out logically what's going on. And we're talking about way back in the Bible. All these guys coming up with these ideas and stuff nowadays and writing down the book. Solomon already wrote it down. And you know what? From the very beginning, he gets right to the point. Does he not? You okay, sweetie? In Ecclesiastes 1:1-3, he says, meaningless, everything is meaningless. Now, Solomon writes these words at the beginning and the end of the book. You see, in the Hebrew language, they didn't have any kind of exclamation points back then, Brother Tibbs. They didn't have exclamation points, at the end of a word to let you know they really meant that, So the way they did it back then, they would emphasize something through repetition. That's the way they did it. That's the only way they knew how to do it. And you find it all throughout the Bible. For example, when Isaiah said, holy, holy, holy is the Lord our God. That was his exclamation point, all right? So whenever they repeated something, so when y'all start reading it, when they repeat something, they're trying to get your attention. They were letting us know that this was a big deal. For example, in one verse in Ecclesiastes, he repeats the word meaningless 5 times. It was like putting 5 exclamation points at the end of the sentence. Kind of the same way teenagers put all these exclamation points in their text messages when they do OMG or LOL, I don't know. Not that tech savvy. So we all have these exclamation points, and Solomon uses the word meaningless in this book 38 times. What is he trying to say? I think he's trying to say something about meaningless. It's all meaningless, so what we find out in the Solomon report, if you will, or the book of Ecclesiastes is really quite revealing, There are 4 things that only God can give that will make a difference in your life. There are only 4 things that there are 4 things, there are probably others, but there are 4 things really that God can give us all to make a difference in your life. Number 1, God gives meaning to your life. Amen. Solomon kept talking about meaningless, but God gives meaning to it, and he sums it up by telling us all. Even in 1 Peter 1:3, he said, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. God gives our lives meaning. My father used to tell me, Preston, nothing ever really matters except a relationship with God. And see, y'all got to understand the climate of what was going on at the time. I was this high school athlete, I was this star in football. and I was this star in track, and I kept getting my name in the paper, and it looked like I was going to be drafted to go play professional football, you understand, but my dad was trying to give me some foundation even back then, because he saw where it was going, okay? So he said, Preston, I think he said it 3 times. Nothing really matters except a relationship with God. And that's why the Bible tells us to seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and all of its righteousness. And all these other things, significant things, will be added unto you. Amen. So Solomon's saying to all of us, if all there is to life is life, then life is nothing, huh? But if we're living for God, God adds meaning to your life. Who says amen right there? He is saying that there is not one part of your life that is meaningful, right? If there is no God, he is saying basically, if there is no God, hey, what's the point? What's the point? Why? Because we were created, my brothers and sisters, for worship. That's why God created us, for us to worship. You see, we can add up all the many times all the money that you make. You can add up all the title stuff that you own, all your cars or whatever, your houses, your stocks, your bonds. You can add all that stuff up. Or how many times you get your name in the newspaper, or all the promotions that you get, or any of that thing. If it's without God, it's meaningless. It's meaningless. If God is not the center of it all, it's meaningless, huh? And it's so true. Ecclesiastes 1:11 says, nobody remembers what happened yesterday. And that things that will happen tomorrow, nobody will remember them either. Don't count on being remembered, is what they say. Now, don't get me wrong. We're going to be remembered for a short while, you understand. But I'm talking about 100 years from now. Are they going to remember you? What kind of legacy are you going to leave to be remembered, huh? But in the grand scheme of things, people come and people go, amen? So only God can add meaning to your life. God makes the difference in our lives. Number 2, the second thing that only God can give is morality. God can only give morality. God is the foundation for morality. You know, I read in a book by Dr. James Merritt, and it talks about, he said, it stands to reason that if there is no meaning to life, then there would be no morality in life. Which means there is really no right that's always right, and there is really no wrong that's always wrong. If there are no morals, there is no bad that's always bad, or good that's always good. Y'all understand what I'm saying here? So where do you get your idea from what's right and what's wrong? Huh? See, that's why so many people believe, but what's the difference? I'm trying to get you to see what the difference that God makes in your life. The thing is, you can only get your idea of what's right and what's wrong 3 different ways. 3 different ways. Either it's the way we feel, huh? Well, I just do what I feel like, or what feels good, and if I feel something is wrong, or if I feel something is evil, I just don't do it. So you get it that way. Or your morals are based on what you think. I just do what I think is right and good. So if I think something is wrong, bad, evil, I just don't do it. Or number 3, your morals become a matter of your opinion. Huh? You base whatever you think, right or wrong, good or evil, what somebody else feels is right. And it might be somebody that you respect, because you've got a lot of people out there, like your Amish people. They have some different sets of views of what's right and what's wrong. So it's just an opinion about what's right and what's wrong. But if you do this, there is no really objective basis for what's right or what's wrong, or what's good or what's evil. Consider this, my brothers and sisters. If we knew that our life is going to end in death, why would somebody do what's morally right? Or why would somebody even do what's morally wrong if it were not going to benefit them? Huh? If all there is to life is just this life, huh? Not no after party. No heaven, huh? No eternity. What benefit would it be for us, huh? See, if that's all that it is, then you will only look out for yourself. See, if that's all you based your life on, all you're going to do is look out for number 1. And we already live in a selfish culture anyway. Just think how bad it would be if there was no God. So the thing that God gives us is